Orlando Bowen. You have met on our program a number of occasions. He was a former Toronto Argonaut back in 2004. He was beaten by 2 police officers in Mississauga, Ontario. Ended up settling a lawsuit against Peel Regional Police out of court, but it was the concussion that he suffered during the incident that he says led to the end of his professional playing days. He is now executive director of One Voice, One Team, which is all about youth leadership, community service, and empowerment. Orlando's voice is always a powerful one on this issue, so it's one we're happy to add to our discussion today. Orlando Bowen in Brampton, Ontario. Welcome back. Good to see you again.
Good to see you as well, Heather. How are you?
Well, I am well, and I'm really interested in what your thoughts are today. You heard Michael say we're under 90 minutes now until the start of opening arguments. People are calling this, Orlando, the most consequential trial in the United States in a long time. How do you see the significance of this moment?
Yeah, I would agree with that statement. I see this as the most consequential trial, like globally, in terms of its potential impact. I don't think that Derek Chauvin is the only one that's on trial. I believe that the justice system is on trial, and I also believe that our humanity is on trial as well.
That is so interesting that you say that. We heard that even at the vigil last night, for example, Orlando, from the Reverend Al Sharpton, saying that, yes, Derek Chauvin is specifically going to be in that prisoner's docket, but it is the U.S. system on trial. What do you mean by that?
I feel as though there have been a number of instances in the past that we've experienced where there has been agents of the system who have had an overwhelming amount of evidence against them or against their actions that have walked freely, and there hasn't been justice from a community perspective in terms of the system itself being held accountable. That hasn't been the outcomes that we're used to. And in a number of different instances, there's been conversations or the position that things happen so fast. Police have to make split-second decisions. And being civilians, we can only appreciate the fact that we don't have to make life and death decisions in short amount of time like that on an ongoing basis. This time, however, when we're talking about 8 minutes and 46 seconds of someone pleading for their life, of bystanders pleading for the individual's life, I think it's a little bit different. And there is hope that the energy that has been sparked through this, there could be something connected to the justice and there being some level of accountability through this process.
I want to come back to the notion of hope in conclusion, Orlando, but what you said about how this time is different. I think we had that conversation back last May when this happened, and we were initially looking at what was going on, the protests in the U.S. and in Canada after the death of George Floyd. What has changed, Orlando, since those initial conversations, since that time 10 months ago?
I feel as though people, generally speaking, are more open to having conversations and looking at ways that they perhaps may have not even have seen or recognized things in terms of what it's like to be a person of color in North America, African American, African Canadian, Indigenous, or other, right? In our conversations with corporate folk, with people in schools, they say that their perspective has shifted in terms of what it means and what the lived experiences are. And because of that shift in perspective, people are more open. My hope is that through that openness and through what comes out of this particular case, that there can be changes, right? Wholesale changes as it looks to, as we seek to hold everyone accountable, right? The only way for us to get better is to actually acknowledge that we're not at our best right now. And if we can acknowledge that, we could be open to looking at how can we be better? How could the system be better? And how can we as individuals be better as we go out, as we dismantle systems that are oppressive and that are racist? And what can we do personally, professionally, and with our time and energy?
Since we're talking about conversations, since we're having a conversation, I'm curious. Last night at supper, you have 3 teenage boys. What was your conversation on the eve of this trial?
We have 18, 16, and 14-year-old sons, and It's heavy. Hearts are heavy. They're hopeful, but it comes with a little bit of trepidation as well, because at this point, they don't necessarily believe that the system would hold an agent of itself accountable. Um, but they're hoping that in light of the global impact of this specific incident of George Floyd's murder, they're hoping that things will be different this time, and that things could be better going forward for them. I remember our 17-year-old getting his driver's license and being so excited about getting his license and saying, you don't have to drive me to practice, but also saying, can you please make sure that the registration and ownership is easily accessible, so if I get stopped, I could quickly take it out, put it on the dash, and keep both hands on the steering wheel so I make sure I get home at night. So these things are in the back of their minds, and today it's in the forefront.
You know, I remember you're telling us that very story when I think one of our earlier conversations. It was very powerful that those are the kinds of talks you have to have with your son as you send him out for a night out or for even in the day. I haven't forgotten that. So there is hope, and you've touched on what that hope looks like for you. But what if there is an acquittal at the end of this?
I can't even, I try not to mentally go there. I hold out for hope. I think that what we've seen in terms of the global outcry for justice, I have no idea what type of impact it would have if there is an acquittal, but I do know, going back to what we spoke of earlier, the whole system is on trial here, right? So if there is an acquittal based on, the evidence presented and the evidence that the world saw, there are going to be some challenges in terms of people being willing to embrace that as a satisfactory outcome.
Orlando, thank you for this morning. I'll be back. We'll check in with you again as this carries on. Really appreciate your perspective as always.
Thank you, Heather.
Thanks.